first year here at William. I also have a son in Mount Prospect in fourth grade. So I noticed some people from sports throughout the years. I have been Nina's co-president this year, and as she transitions off the board next year, if I will be remaining. And one of the things that we need are volunteers. We need help on the PTO. We have several board positions open. So please, I encourage you to really consider it. And if you haven't tried kids or are interested, please see me or any of my co-board members. We could really use some help. A lot of us do work full-time as well, and so it is manageable and doable. And the more help we have, the easier it is for all of us to get everything done. And it doesn't then just fall on one person. So please give it some consideration. We welcome the help. And if you do, I look forward to working with you next year. That's all the business we have for the PTO this year, or this meeting. So I'll turn it over to Mrs. Hudot to talk about the program.
Thank you very much. And I appreciate all the work that we can get from our PTO. We're actually going to get right into our presentation today because we have a two-part presentation. We have one that starts now on the introductions of district-level supervisors who are here to share with you a little bit about the fifth grade transition as far as programming. Today we have Ms. Kathy Stoller, who is the supervisor of world language. Next to her we have Ms. Tara Bowman, who is the supervisor of mathematics till June. Ms. Bowman, congratulations, is retiring after what, 30-some years in education? Over 30 years in education. So I see boo-boo faces. You have no idea how much I'm going to cry.
Sitting in the audience are students.
Our students of Ms. Bowman. So I think we should applaud and recognize her. Next to Ms. Bowman is Mr. Tom Isiak, and he's the supervisor of science, technology, and tech education. And so they will be collectively speaking to you a little bit about programming information from 5th, rising into 6th, and that transitional piece. We will then begin, Ms. Fox is coming.
If she doesn't,
Yeah, Ms. Fox and Ms. Bowman will collectively be doing a second presentation at the conclusion of this, which I believe is on gifted and talented. And so we'll take a brief pause, and then we'll introduce them to the gifted and talented district-wide presentation. So, without further ado, I'm going to introduce the team, and I welcome all of you to WAMS. Thank you.
So I have the road. However, if you want to drive,
you saw me yesterday with this. I didn't do well.
So that's the one, and then the big one in the center will give you a laser.
I don't,
I know.
yeah.
So our goal today, I know some parents came in and were questioning what the topic was. It's not a general overview of the middle school curriculum. It is geared at families who are entering WAMS for the first time. But if you're not a fifth grade parent and you just want to know more, we'll be happy to entertain those questions as well. The reason we're focusing on mathematics, science, and world languages is because these are the classes that students now have options for. There are prescribed tracks that are children can just enter and go in for English and social studies. However, in world languages, they have a choice in math and science, looking at the STEM programs and so on. There tends to be more questions and options to the students. So our goal today is to clarify that for you. We'll break it down into each segment, and then we'll have an opportunity at the end to interact with us and ask some questions. Okay. So this is what we currently offer in district.
So right now, fifth grade students are taking fifth grade math, which is fifth grade standards. And there's a small cohort of students who are in what we've been calling a telescope math, or the gifted and talented. Notice I'm doing that, gifted and talented math. So you're going to see this a couple of times throughout my presentation. It's just the beginning for you just to see a quick overview, and I see phones going up. Look at this. They always take pictures of my math chart. This is going to be posted, I believe, too. So everything that's up here, you will have access to. This is all on my website. But this is the view of entering sixth grade, what the math looks like, and to try to understand The one message right now is we do not have below level courses in this district. So if you are a sixth grade student, whether you struggle in math or you're good in math or you're where you should be, it is sixth grade math. We also now coming in, we started this current year, so fifth grade coming will be year 2, that we're offering an accelerated sixth grade math course. So I'll come back to that chart and start with the majority of the students are going to come from fifth grade right into sixth grade math, and they're going to learn sixth grade standards, and that's where most of our kids should be. And there is a connection from where they're leaving off with the higher level of understanding of ratios. The integers comes into play the first time the kids are really going to start understanding absolute value, the graphing, the coordinate plane, besides quadrant 1, all of a sudden they're going to realize that we have 4 quadrants of the coordinate plane. So sixth grade math has a lot of new standards. And the way I'd like to make this understood is it's sixth grade standards. Then we have 4 students who do struggle, because like I said, our math program is at level. And we know we do have some kids that it takes a little bit longer and they do struggle, so we offer a math support class, which supports those standards as well as just focusing on strengthening the skills, making the students feel a little bit more confident. We know part of the game with math is feeling good about it. So as kids start coming in here in sixth grade and they're struggling and they have no support, it tends to just feed upon itself. So it's a good class to have. It takes place in the cycle, but it's in addition to sixth grade math. So again, it's not like there's a low class. So fifth grade comes to Annan, takes sixth grade math. If they're struggling, they can get support in the math support. And then we have accelerated sixth grade math, which the name is deceiving because it's really 7th and 8th grade math standards. So right now, the students who will automatically be coming into this class are those that were in the gifted and talented 5th grade, because they've all, in their 5th grade class right now, they've been taught the 6th grade standards. So the integers, the rational expressions, fractions, all these fundamentals that you need for your future math classes, they're getting in 5th grade. So a 5th grade student who's taking 5th grade math did not get that. So just keep that in mind. While students who are in this class, they have a B or higher, now they're automatically in that accelerated track that I showed you the chart at the beginning. And that means once you're in, as long as you maintain B or higher and improving your mastering skills at that level, you will continue right up to the high school in that track. Okay, so just to make sure that we understand that the students who are the majority of the students that are in this class have been taught 6th grade standards. So we know that there might be a few students who are in 5th grade math right now that may have been not been identified, either they came into the district later or they just developed a little bit later. So there is an opportunity for any 5th grade student to go into this accelerated group, which means now they're going to sit in the classroom with other kids that have learned a full year of 6th grade math. This isn't just a student who's in 5th grade math and likes math and is doing really well. Because then with that kid, we're not just going to say, yeah, you can go into this class, because now you're going from 5th grade standards right to 7th grade standards. And the most fundamental year of standards before algebra really takes place in 6th grade. But we do have, so the students who are already in 5th grade, gifted and talented, they move in. And then we have an on-ramp procedure. All 5th grade students take math. So after that math test, any student who scores a 245 or higher will then be invited, they don't have to, but if they score a 245 or higher, they will be invited to then take an in-district test to demonstrate that they already have the skills to actually be able to sit in this class and work with their peers that are going to be in that class. So that brings us back to this chart. But also now what I want to make clear is there are so many pathways in math, which is why I guess you have to take pictures of these charts. But if you can see Math 6, which is at level, and I know there's a big focus in this district to try to help us get kids to take classes that they're comfortable taking, that they should be taking, not to push too soon. Because pushing too soon really does damage kids. It does. Every year, there's another day, there's another time for a child to say, I'm ready. Even as far as the high school, even as far as junior year, we have kids going from a pre-calc into a BC calc and getting to the same place. So at the end, remember, maybe that's something I should make sure that everybody understands, but these kids that are in this accelerated math class in the elementary school, if they stay where they are, they're going to end up taking 2 years of calc at the high school. That's the end game. But that's not the only way you get to the end game. There's like 5 other opportunities to get to that end game. And if we start looking at statistics, there's more success with kids starting later getting to that end game than the ones that start too early. But at the same time, there are kids who are ready for it. So we need to have it, we need to offer it, but we need to make sure, which is the hard part, we need to make sure we're getting the right kids in these accelerated classes. So a 6th grade student in 6th grade can also then become accelerated by after 6th grade. They can take 7th grade math, which again, our lowest math is always at level, or they can jump into an accelerated math class. Okay, I want to also just give you quickly to see forward for next year. So right now, it's not on my website, but it'll be on the new supervisor's website. And next year, that if you look at 8th grade, so this is why the current 5th grade is coming in. Right now, their option is 6th grade or accelerated 6th grade. Then, those kids next year will have an option of 7th grade, accelerated 7th grade, or on Algebra 1 in 7th grade. And then again, there's another opportunity to jump in, because by the time the current 5th graders will be 8th graders, there will now be an honors algebra in 8th grade. So there will be a math 8 at level, there'll be algebra 1 year accelerated, there'll be an honors algebra 1 that's going to come in some classes at the high school, and then honors geometry, which is 2 years accelerated. Is anybody getting scared about this? It's nuts. I have to say that. Yes.
I am.
Yes. Quick, yes. Only because you asked questions when you were a student.
So, and I'm thinking, when I was in 8th grade, I studied algebra.
With me. In what grade? Tell everybody.
8th grade.
8th grade.
And that was the best you could do.
That is right.
But I'm just curious how, and I get the whole accelerator, but how do you continue to identify these cohorts as these cohorts then break up?
That's good fun.
Okay.
That's towards the end. You're right. That's good.
Because
That's a
I
good
was
question. Yes.
resisting for
No,
test.
it was much easier back then. Life is so much easier in the Okay. So, and now the goal too, and that's something that the whole idea of math, no matter what grade these kids are in, kindergarten through calculus, it is not about cramming and purging, and it's not about rote learning or procedural learning. Really, what we're trying to do is have these 8 practices come into play, and I'm sure you've seen them already from kindergarten up, so I'm not going to read them to you, but I did highlight the 2 that really make the difference of any child that is going to go above his or her grade level in math. That's where the spoon feeding stops. That's where, you don't come in the morning of the test and say you're going to memorize what to do that day of the test and think that even if you do get an A, because that's your learning style, that's not going to get you to get to the next level where you do have to persevere on your own. When you're eventually going to be in classes that you've never seen in questions before, and you have to go into your bedroom with all your math and answer a question that you've never seen. They weren't in the homework, they weren't in the classwork, but you should have the skills. So the perseverance and be able to critique the reasoning and understanding, which a lot is the showing the work, and I'm sure that, especially in elementary school, we have lots of kids that don't know why they want to write, they'll be smiling at me. They have to show the work, they know the answers are. And it's so hard to get young minds to understand that just because you have the answer, it doesn't necessarily mean it's for the right reason. It also could be you got it in an effective way. So the idea of being able to demonstrate your thinking through math and to be able to critique and look at someone else's thinking of math and have those kinds of conversations is really the underlying thread through all the math classes. didn't already know, math and science weave together.
So that is the segue for my portion of this. To clarify, we don't level science at the middle school. Fifth graders are currently taking what we call spiraling. Our K-5 program spirals, meaning that they get physical science, earth science, and life science every single year. This is the culmination of that program. If you look at the state standards, they are very specific as to what topics in each of those 3 areas of science are hit in each grade, K through 5th grade. Once they hit William Allen, they will do physical science as their 6th grade course. They will then do life science as their 7th grade course, and they will then do earth science as their 8th grade course. So it's a big change, and they get more science, and obviously that's very exciting for me, and very exciting for a lot of kids who are kind of passionate about that science time. But that math-science relationship, as we talk about all the leveling and the options that are available to kids, we see ripple effects that go all the way to the 12th grade year that Ms. Bowman has already alluded to. So I wanted to take some time and talk about that. In my time here, I arrived in the district in July of 2016. I've been working very closely with Ms. Bowman as her role from math teacher to math coach to math supervisor has evolved. And we've heard some interesting myths. It is a complete myth that in order to be a high-achieving honor science student, you have to get in on that accelerated math 6. It is a complete myth. Okay? Facts. There is a correlation, as Ms. Bowman said. Yes. Obviously, if you're taking physics and you're currently in calculus, you have a greater bag of tricks than a kid who's taking physics concurrently in algebra 2. That is a fact. However, that doesn't make one guaranteed to do better than the other. The correlation has that causation. It is a function of whether or not the students are adept at using that bag of tricks. I know that that chart does not come out great, which is why as you take pictures of this and try to zoom in, I want to reiterate, we do post these things later online, so it may be easier to try to view it. What I tried to map out here is, regardless of the math starting point that Ms. Bowman had alluded to, there are pathways that get you to AP Science, even if you started in Algebra 1, meaning you were a Math 8 on-level student, on-level. You took Math 6, followed by Math 7, followed by Math 8, and entered the high school in Algebra 1. You can still take Honor Science as an on-level math student. You can proceed through the sequence and end up in AP Science courses as an on-level math student. So as you look at these options, that myth of you have to push to get into this, or you're going to lose options at the high school, is completely inaccurate and is really bad advice to follow. I do want to note, the on-level student, they will be able to take AP Science electives. On that previous slide, you'll notice that AP Physics 2 and AP Physics C, the most math-intensive of the AP Science courses, will be difficult to get to if you start in Algebra 1 at the high school. You probably do not want to be taking calculus-based physics. It is probably the hardest AP course, save maybe BC Calc in the two competing, because you're applying calculus to physics problems. So, with that one being aside, and that one being maybe the one exception, there are plenty of other. There are actually 6 AP course offerings that we have in science. You can take 4 of them having started in Algebra 1 at the high school. If you do start in Algebra 1, which is a completely appropriate place to start, you do hit a disconnect where you need to be concurrently in Algebra 2 as a sophomore to continue in the honor science sequence. It is a really, really bad idea to try to force those courses over the summer, because you lose out on what Ms. Bowman called that bag of tricks. You don't have the full foundation that you will need. It's like trying to rush the liver building a house. You're going to miss something, and there's going to be some structural issues.
I'm going to jump in. Okay?
Yes.
But when it is in algebra, and I'm going to tell you, there's 9 kids right now that trusted me, and they're doing amazing. They took Math 8 in 8th grade. They did algebra last year in 9th grade, and they got A's. They grew. They're solid, and they are right now, as we speak, sitting in geometry and algebra 2 in honors chemistry, and they are B's and A's across the board. So there is a time when you can, it happens for you. It clicks at a later time. It makes more sense. Not try to cram a course in 6 weeks to just prove to somebody you have the skills because you know, with the word purge, cram and purge. But that is another one of those options that I said, instead of trying to push so early about accelerated 6th grade math, even if it's in 8th grade and you're doing 8th grade math and then you go to the high school and you grow, algebra becomes your thing. That's amazing. I've talked to kids who said they never even knew that they liked math until they were in algebra in 9th grade. And all of a sudden, they were loving it. What could they do? And that's a great way. So that's another way to jump in at the high school.
So, as far as choosing the right pathway, and that's something we're really trying to stress, is that you're talking about a high school program when you have a 5th grader preparing to transition to the 6th grade. And this is in response to what we call that race to nowhere, that perception that you have to get in early on or you're never going to make it. It's a myth we've been battling hard, and despite all the data, we've never seemed to be able to turn the corner. So kind of as Ms. Bowman's parting gift, she's like, you know, I really want to try to articulate where we see the fallout, because it's not in 6th grade when you shouldn't have been there and you forced your way in. It's not in 7th grade. We see it fall apart 10th, 11th, and 12th grade for these students when they hung on and hung on and hung on. Picture that cat poster, that inspirational cat hanging in the tree. They hang until about 10th, 11th, 12th grade. So in looking at this and talking about everything that Ms. Bowman talks about with identifying who is appropriate for those courses, these are kind of the things we look at and the things to consider. You know, the aptitude and diligence, the amount of work effort it takes to produce the grade that you're using to qualify. If you're studying for 3 hours a night all year long to take that math test to hopefully get that score to get into the accelerated track, you're probably not the person who that's the best fit for, to put all that work in just to qualify. Because then you're going to have to triple or quadruple that effort to then step.
And continuing it as you move up now.
So the nightly workload there is really something to measure, because every year that you move forward, you can expect to have to do more. Especially once you get to the high school and there's leveling in English, there's leveling in social studies, there's leveling in science, there's leveling in world language, there's leveling in mathematics, and who knows what elective courses you're going to be taking and how that's going to impact your homework workload. The things that you should not consider. My friend is doing it and I'm going to take the class with them. That is a terrible way to plan about what courses to take. Truthfully. That perception. You are a 5th grader preparing to move to 6th grade. If you are already trying to build a course schedule based upon a specific college or university, you are way ahead of the game. That's not where you should be. You should be thinking about what the best fit is. And I have to reference my media specialists do a fantastic job in helping children select books that are appropriate of interest to them. And they relate it to wearing appropriate shoes. And even though a shoe may fit, if I was going to go run a marathon, I would not be wearing this shoe that currently fits. It's going to be an inappropriate match for my plans. So I liken it to that, and looking at all the options that we have here, that myth of you have to get in early. We have so many other ways to accommodate kids and their abilities and their interests later in the pipeline that make it a much better fit. You have to apologize, I have to apologize for my chicken scratch on
I
this.
think it's awesome. This is my favorite slide.
Rather than use students' work and out students who may or may not be struggling or may not be succeeding in the program, I took what I know of that 10th, 11th grade where we start to see them really separate who has the bag of skills and who's been kind of faking it, hoping to hang in there. And I showed three ways that a student may solve this problem. Yes, it is a physics problem, so I know again, and I'm talking to 5th grade parents preparing to move to 6th grade, I'm way over the moon at this point. The idea is in that if you rush through and don't have that foundation, this is where we see it start to fall out. And this is where we see the child who is doing 3+ hours a night to try to hang in there and doing all this extra work, they may eventually get it the right answer. But when you're talking about the pacing in our honors and AP courses at that level, the person who's doing all this extra work to try to get to the right answer only gets about 75% of the way, if that, through the tests, through the labs, through the assignments. This is where we see that lack of that skill set really start to have some fallout. and it's too late for us to really make an adjustment. Now you're seeing low grades, where they're on the transcript, where you're applying for colleges. That's where the damage is kind of undoable. Whereas had they say, hey, I don't need to be in a super fast, super accelerated group in 6th grade, I'll stay on pace and move up when I'm ready, they would probably be one of the red or blue students. And that's where we see in all that analogy, if you try to get there too fast when you are not ready, it ends up having fallout much later in the sequence.
I'm interrupting you again, and I know it's okay. That first one, that question, I've seen that. I've worked with kids that come into my office that are struggling because they can't finish tests at the high school. The parents are calling, they get extra time. You talk about you're in an AP class, there is no extra time. And it really is that. It is me sitting with the student and saying, why did you just take 1/3 and multiply by reciprocal? And when that kid is a junior looking at me, like, what am I talking about? I know. What did they do in 6th grade? That's your 6th grade skill of understanding, of when is it appropriate to go right to the effective model, or to go, okay, this is how I do it, and then you're spending way too much time. So I know that to me is a great slide, so that needs to get a picture of.
Posting it.
Right? Because again, the answer is the same, but there's a rationale as to why one answer really is the effective way to get there.
And I also don't want to, fail to acknowledge, we have some very, very gifted students in this district. There are students, this is a physics question, who would read that prompt without my work there. They would read that prompt, they would see that, and they would go, oh, that's going to be 1/6. They would do it in their heads just like that, much, like I would at this point in my stage. I would not have been there as a 5th or 6th grader. They are a very microcosm. And where I say, to try to say, well, they're on my son's soccer team and they're doing it, and they're really good friends, I like them. You can't base it off of, what other people are doing. I don't pick my shoes based on what Tara's doing, to use that media specialist analogy again. I choose the thing that fits best. And that's what kind of brings us full circle, before I hand things over to world language, is for the science stake in this, I'm really kind of imploring you, and if I reach one kid and they make a better decision, I think we really would have accomplished our mission with this, is that we have great program offerings. We really, really do. But if you try to push into be at a level that is not a great fit, if you try to get there too fast, there are far more pitfalls than there are benefits. There really are, and that's what we're trying to implore you to, as you look at all these things that we have to offer, all things in time. Things are right for different kids at different times. So with that said, I'm now going to transition to Ms. Stopper, who's going to talk about our amazing world languages program. After we bored you with math and science for probably far too long.
What's awesome about world language is you can become a doctor, you can be a teacher, a lawyer, an entrepreneur, and everything you learn in your world language class will make you stronger in that field. We focus on language, but we also focus on being a global learner and a participant in society and understanding different perspectives. So currently, our 5th graders, as you know, are taking a sequence of Latin lessons in the 4th and 5th grade. If I were a 4th or 5th grade teacher and I was told I had to teach another language, Latin, Spanish, I would be shaking my boots every time I had to do that lesson. So I can side with some of the 5th grade and 4th grade teachers, who some of them may do it with more enthusiasm and some may do it with a little more reluctance, and that's just due to their comfort level. So 4th and 5th grade Latin is what we offer now. We're coming up to the middle school. Students are exposed to world language 5 days a week. We offer currently French, Italian, Latin, Spanish taught by world language certified teachers. And we have alternative entry points for students. As students transition from the elementary school to the middle school, sometimes they need extra support in different areas, whether it be the math support classes we spoke about. We have lit support. We have organizational programs like our MAP program that really helps kids find their way in the middle school so they can navigate independently. In those situations, then, we allow students not to take a language in 6th grade. And this is very common. We want to make sure we're educating the whole child. And some of our classes, which we kind of wanted to express before, is our regular classes, our 6th grade math, our 6th grade science, in other districts, are their honors version. I mean, the rigor of what we do in our district is so advanced. And our kids rise to the occasion. That's why we do it. We can. So we want to make sure that we're meeting all ends for them. So for those students who are meeting the 6th grade regular curriculum with a little bit of struggle, we would allow them now to take 6th grade language, and then they can enter in 7th grade. So we have an alternative entry point. We only offer it in Spanish because the population is smaller, we have the staff we have available. So students can enter 7th grade Spanish, and then take, so it's called Spanish 7A, and then they continue to Spanish 8B. And it's the equivalent of what the students are doing in a 3-year sequence. We just take out some of those extra project-based things, but we want them to leave the middle school at the same point as their peers. So they're not at a disadvantage if they don't take it in 6th grade. We make sure we account for it. And the teachers in our Spanish program here are outstanding, and they work together to make sure that all students exit at the same point. We also, this year, for the first time, offered, and it'll run again next year, hopefully forever, a program for students who can't take a world language at all in 6th or 7th grade because of the need for that support. The difference is when they get to the high school, it's a state requirement that you take at least 1 year of world language. For Ridge High School, I'm proud that we have a state requirement of 2 years of a world language to graduate. So what we'd like to do is prepare them a little bit for the level 1 class. Because when they get to the high school, when they're in level 1, they could be with students like themselves who've never been exposed to a language, or they can be with students who just decided to switch languages, or they could be with students who are taking additional languages. So we want to have everyone go into that level 1 class with some background of what studying a language looks like. So we offer what's called Foundations of Language. It's a semester elective for 8th graders, and we teach how to study a language, exposing them to several languages. So the teacher who teaches the class speaks Russian, Spanish, French, and English, right? So we taught the course, but Spanish is the primary use of examples in the class when we're teaching them how to have small conversations or maybe what a verb conjugation looks like. We use it in Spanish because many of these students from our records do go on to take Spanish, so we help them with that, but they don't have to. But we use examples from Portuguese, we use examples from what we can do with Mandarin, the way the language translates and so on, to expose them just to global language study. So these are the different options. Students can take languages starting in 6th grade, they can do it starting in 7th grade, or they can take an elective in 8th grade just to strengthen their level 1 experience at high school. World languages have, the instruction and the way that we teach our courses has changed a lot over the last 5 years, 10 years, and certainly when most of us took languages, whether in another country or if we did it here when we were in high school. We don't really use textbooks anymore, and that is a struggle for a lot of families. They want that resource at home, but the best practice is leading, and a lot of our comparable districts don't have textbooks either because it's such a prescribed way of studying language. We have teacher-generated thematic units. So, for example, there used to be a unit called The House, right? I remember teaching 7th grade French, and there was a unit called To Have. Oh, it was the avoir unit. It was the whole unit was centered around a verb. That does not sound so. Now we have units that are, the unit is called My Heroes, or the unit is on ecotourism, or the unit is on family structures around the world. So students are learning through the language. They're not just learning the language. Learning the house is really boring. I know what a house is. I know that in a kitchen there's a sink. I know that in a bedroom there's a bed. That's boring. So we teach about the way people live in different parts of the world through the target language. So the materials that you see are very progressive. They're teacher-generated and they're amazing. Our kids have great outcomes. But unless you're in Latin, you will not see a textbook in the middle school. And the reason for Latin is because Latin is a translation-based language, so we have to give them text to read and grow to get up to the higher level of study. So our goal, this is presenting differently than the actual screen. No? You say that before, it's weird, because that line where it says end of the 3-year cycle should actually be on the grid, not at the bottom. We don't want them to go down, we want them to go up. So this is the proficiency levels of how our goals for our standards. Our standards are written with these, with NL, NH, IM, IH, to show the way we want our students to go through the level. So our plan, that line should go right to the top of novice high. Our goal is that when students leave the 8th grade program here, whether from the 2 or 3-year sequence, that they're considered novice high learners, and I'll show you what that looks like. So a novice high learner will demonstrate these skills. You will start to become familiar with these terms: interpretive, interpersonal, and presentational. I walk into 6th grade classrooms here and hear students go, "Do we have an interpretive today?" Do we have a presentational today? Because these are the three ways that we interact with language. The interpretive mode allows us to read or listen and understand. The interpersonal mode allows us to read emails or have conversations and interact with back and forth dialogue. And presentational is just the student either writing or speaking with no input from anyone else. So we practice all of these three skills in our languages. Latin, we focus on interpretive. Some presentational when they're writing the text, but mostly they're interpreting. So an interpretive activity would be that a novice high would be that they can identify the general topic, some basic information, familiar text, everyday vocabulary. Interpersonal, they're starting to communicate spontaneously. They're again, familiar and everyday, words, phrases, chunks, simple sentences. And presentational is the same idea, everyday topics, word, phrases, chunks, and simple sentences. If you see this image on the side, all of our teachers have this hung up in their classroom. This is the goal of what we do. Our goal is at the center of communications in world language. I did not make this. This is what our national organization, this is our philosophy in a graphic. Our goal is communication, and communities, and cultures, and connections, and comparisons tie everything together. Our goal is not pronunciation. Our goal is not perfection. Those types of things evolve over time. Think of your children. I have a 2.5-year-old who says things wrong all the time. I'm okay with it. She's communicating. I know by the time she gets older, she's going to say it right. So we're not hyper-focused on grammar and precision. What we're seeing now, as we've changed our curriculum to be more thematic through the years, is very interesting. I had a Spanish 3 teacher come to me at the beginning of the year and say, I don't know, these kids, they're just not remembering this grammar rule, indirect object pronouns, and so on. And I said, yeah, but what are their strengths? And they said, they'll just talk. And I said, well, that seems like it outweighs the fact that they can't do an indirect object pronoun or so on, because 7 or maybe 10 years ago, they wouldn't talk, but their grammar is beautiful. But what is that going to get them in the long run, right? Our goal is for them to be able to communicate. The majority of these students, the way that we're going to pull that out of them is through speaking and interaction. And this is basically what I was going to be. A little no use of the textbook, teacher-generated units, authentic materials, focus on language proficiency, getting to the novice high level. Some of our students will get higher than that. Some of us will struggle getting there, but I'll show you in the next slide where the end game is for our high school students. We also do short stories and readers, which has been growing tremendously here. At the end of 8th grade in French, Italian, and Spanish, students, marking period 4 is reading a book in the target language. Now, it's this big, and the chapters are about 1.5 pages long, but it's completely in the target language. And I would think, as a middle school student, that would be an accomplishment, to say, I read a book. They're called them readers. They're very age appropriate. They're called like The Voyage or The Boyfriend. You know, it's just, you know, what the drama that goes on in middle school life. But they're very simple. They're in the present tense. So the students feel comfortable with it. It's a way for them to sum up everything they've learned in middle school and show that they can actually interpret text. And then when we get to the high school, level 2 begins with a reader in the same series. Characters move on. Now they're traveling in Martinique as opposed to France or so on. And we continue to start and end our units at the high school with readers. But what's happened is the teachers are loving it. And you're seeing teachers are saying, hey, can I try one in 7th grade now? I know Italian and French. Can we do one in 7th grade now? I think I want to do one with like 6th graders at the end of the year. And I'm saying do it because it is making sense of all they're learning. And the kids are really enjoying it. So some sample units we have with those themes. We do a whole winter unit on Quebec and the winter festival there. We do the Feast of San Gennaro and talk about festivals and traditions in Italy and the United States. We have in 7th grade, they do a big unit on the tapas in Spain, and then we have a restaurant come in, and the students pretend they're at a restaurant, order food, and speak the language. And in 8th grade, we do a pretty cool thing with the Church of War and Latin. So which language should your child select? By now, they've probably all selected, hopefully they have until the end of the month if there's any changes. I encourage you to, when we publish this, go to this website, leadwithlanguages.org. I actually want to show it to you because this will take you to a really neat, there we go. So it has all of these different languages here, and if you click on one, for example, Latin, it just helps you have a dialogue with your child about what their interests are, and And why learn Latin if you're interested in classical literature, if you want to improve your vocabulary, if you're interested in medicine. So it just is a little promotion for each of the languages, and it has every language that we offer here. So it's a fun site to navigate with your child. And it's linked directly to our presentation. There's also a video it's a slideshow of images from our actual instruction. I narrate talking about the program if you want to look at that with your child as well. And you really need to focus on what your child is interested in, okay? Because at WAMS, you are taking this language for 3 years. You cannot take French in 6th grade and then say, oh, I'm going to switch and take Spanish 7A. Nope, it's a 3-year commitment. That's the way our program is structured. So you don't want them to take Italian because their grandmother wants them to speak Italian, but they're dying to go to France and they want to speak French. Like, let them take French, please, please, because their intrinsic motivation is going to lead to success down the line. And they can always change languages when they get to high school. So let me just show you real quick what we've gone through that. So this is what our high school timeline looks like, just to think all the way. This is on the website. This is in the Bridge High School Program of Studies, and again, you'll get this presentation. So in middle school, we have students, is the blue. Students are either taking 3 years of a language, 2 years of language, foundations of language, or some students are not taking a language. Your options when you get to the high school are the natural progression would be for students to go on to level 2. They can take level 2 or level 2 honors. So this is our year 1. And you notice year 1 in orange at the top. They can continue on. So year 2 would be level 3 and level 3 honors. And at that point, they can stop taking language. They've met our Ridge High School 2 consecutive years of the same language requirement. I want to say that again. 2 consecutive years of the same language. You will not be helping your child at all if they take a year off to get some other classes in, because that 1 year gap will make it really hard to jump back into the next year. Then, after they've met that requirement, they can really choose their path, because at this point, it's up to them if they want to take this language. Many colleges prefer 3 or 4 years. Most of our students take 3 or 4 years, but it's not a necessity. They can go on to take our culture and society classes, which are there's year A and year B. They just run every opposite year. You can take them in either order. And in French and in Spanish, they're a virtual tour of the world. They take about 6 to 8 weeks on a different country. They highlight the geography, the specific culture, and then if there's something historical or artistic that country is known for, they focus on that. In Italy, they focus on the regions in the same respect. And in Latin, I love it. In A, they study birth till death of a Roman, and then in B, they study death through the after of a Roman. So it's really getting into the culture of the people. And the focus of the CP is off the specific grammar and more on the interest. And they use yes. Oh, that's a great question. So if your child already, at the middle school, you have to take a world language. So if your child already speaks one of these languages, then just pick another language, right? At the high school, if your child speaks one of these languages, I regularly give placement tests around the end of 8th grade. I think I did 2 last month of 8th grade students who speak Spanish at home. And they didn't take Spanish in middle school. They took French or they took Italian or Latin. But they want to get back into Spanish. A lot of our native speakers can speak really well, but their writing is not as good, and they want to get some more practice on that. So I usually give them a placement test, and then I meet with that child individually and place them into a higher level. And we decide honors or CP based on how they do in their English classes and other classes as well. But that's an individual conversation that I have all the time. But a lot of the students want to, once you get to high school, I know it's hard to talk about college at this point in our career and our life, but once you get to high school, you do have to start thinking about where you want to go to college and what type of university you're looking at. So some students say, oh, I want to be able to take 4 years of language. If you're placed into Spanish 3 as a freshman, you're going to max out. So then you wouldn't have the opportunity to take 4 years of Spanish. So you have to really look at what's best for you. So at the high school, we have the school culture classes. And if you're not wanting to take those classes, there's an honors option. We do level 4 honors, which is essentially the 3 languages for AP. And we have outstanding results on our AP exam. Kids feel prepared. The structure of our program really, all of our teachers from 6th grade through AP use the same rubrics to grade our assignments. We just interpret it a little bit, so they are already trained on what fluency means according to the College Board, which I completely agree with. The other change at the high school is that we currently offer sign language. The program, and I know there's some people here who already mentioned to me addition of Mandarin. In 2014, we did a program evaluation. We reached out to the community and asked what sort of languages they were interested in, and sign language and Mandarin Chinese were at the top. So we had a little bit of time, we got some board approval, and we moved forward with offering those courses. At that time, we only had, I think, forgive me with the numbers, don't quote me on this, but it was under 15 of students wanting to take Mandarin in 6th grade. And it was under 15 of students wanting to take level 1 at the high school. So that's not even enough to run a course, nonetheless hire staff. No one's going to come here to teach 2 periods. So the Mandarin didn't get off the ground. The sign language on the other side, we had over 100 kids sign up for it at the high school, which was a full-time staff member. That program has grown tremendously. On Monday night, we board approved an additional sign language teacher. And next year, we'll be running 10 sections of American Sign Language at the high school. The program, I know, it's outstanding. It's a really great program. We've now added the addition of honors courses. So that program took off due to the staff, due to the students, due to the curriculum. It's a very solid program. So that's an addition that students can take at the high school. As for Mandarin, it's not in the program of studies right now. Like I said, we offered it, I think we offered it 15, I want to say. But this, as someone mentioned already, we have a 5-year curriculum review, and our 6-12 world language review begins this summer. So that means during the coming school year, starting, I guess we'll develop the surveys and things over the summer and the fall. Surveys will go out to the community saying, what is your interest? Are we meeting your needs in world languages? And then we will review those responses next summer and make decisions on the future of our program. I know there's a desire for Chinese in this district. I regularly interact with parents who call me or send emails. And it's certainly something that we look into. I'm not just saying that. It's always an option, but we do things in a cyclical way. So the time is starting this summer. So I think that is it. We are good with time. Yes, specific questions. Oh, yeah, you absolutely, that goes back to this chart. I didn't talk about the bottom half. So on the bottom, students who did not study a language in middle school or are electing to study a new language. All that means is you go to the high school in year 1 and you pick a new language, but there's no honors option because we don't know who's honors, who's going to thrive in it yet because you're all level 1. So everyone takes that course together. You can pick ASL 1, French, Spanish, Latin, or Italian, and then you can move on. So you can see, what I like about the way we restructure the program is if you take level 1, level 2, level 3, you still can take one of those cool culture classes at the end. So we're not just telling you it's all grammar. You can still take a really full, fulfilling 4-year sequence. Yes?
You just mentioned that they eventually your core level in high school, the max out, and in the college. You don't have, if you're planning to take 4 years of language, you do not have enough options to take max out there.
That only happens if you're a heritage speaker who places into a higher level. Our program is structured for students to be able to continue with one language from 6th grade through 12th grade, with AP being the final course, or culture A or B. If you're a heritage speaker that places into a higher level, you may skip so many that I don't have anything else for you. You could take the culture classes, you absolutely can, but there wouldn't be, if you're on an honors route at some, you wouldn't have anything else for you. Yes?
Yeah, I want to say a word about Mandarin.
Yeah.
All right, so my name is Steve Chaykin. I live at 97 Haas Road here in town. My daughter's now in Cedar Hill, and I'd like to request the district to definitely look at providing Mandarin. Mandarin is an increasingly important language on the world scene and in our town. In January and February, I asked town residents their opinion about adding Chinese to the secondary school curriculum in a survey on Burma's Inside, Baskin, WAMS, and WeChat. 73 residents with 152 children responded. Only 2 families opposed the idea. Most of the surveyed parents said their children would enroll in beginning or intermediate Mandarin courses. They also said they wanted an advanced course so that their children could eventually register for the AP Chinese test. The Asian population in general and the Chinese-speaking population in particular are the fastest growing segments of the district elementary school enrollment. Since the 2013-14 school year, which was the last time the district surveyed secondary school families about world language, the percentage of children speaking Chinese at home has grown impressively. In 2016, Chinese was the #1 foreign language spoken at home by children attending Cedar Hill, Liberty Corner, and Mount Prospect schools, according to the latest survey by the New Jersey Department Summit, Westfield, Scotch Plains, Fanwood, Madison, Morristown, Huntington, Central Regional. Chinese is also taught in the private sector, Pingree School, Middle and Upper, Seton
Sir?
Hall.
I'm sorry, this is a PTO meeting.
Yeah.
I do want to hear what you have to say. I do the individuals behind me, but we would like to get on to our next presentation in 5 minutes.
I have one more minute. I have one more minute.
We can just, this isn't a board meeting, and we'll speak with you after, but we'd like to continue on with the next presentation. So we're actually going to call for questions. This is not business that you are heard, but the venue to discuss why we should implement them is not at a PTO school level meeting. That is a board meeting topic, because we'd like to continue with the other presentation, which is on gifted and talented. We actually are moving to that now, because of our time frame with the kids coming in, okay? So, please.
When will the board do it? It's my understanding. it's
So,
like
I think
very,
this
very
Scott was
rare.
just
It only
explaining
comes
5 years,
up every 5 years.
It does.
Yeah, it does. So this summer, it will be reviewed again, because we do a 5-year rotation on all of our curriculum topics.
Right.
So that's when it will be reviewed again.
When will the be able to talk about this? I mean,
Well, like
it's
I
in the middle
said,
of
we will
summer.
be, so I think at our next board meeting, we're approving summer curriculum, right?
Right.
And included in the list, you'll see a 612 World Language Program evaluation. So once we have that board approved for the money to be allotted to that, then we'll call in teachers and we'll meet over the summer. And then they, at that point, that they construct surveys, and that's when they reach out to the community for input.
So, okay, sorry, so when is
But I'm really sorry to stop you. We're going to run out of time today for the next presentation. This is an informational meeting, and we would really like your input, but at a different meeting. If you want to leave that with us, we would be
Sure.
glad to be in touch with you. We're open to your input, it's just not the time. This is informational for the kids coming into 6th grade, and then next, we're moving into the K-5 gifted and talented program.
With 2 more minutes back.
Yeah, and then the kids come in here, what time? In 45 minutes.
Yeah.
Really? So we really have to get moving. The students are in here in 45 minutes.
So just for the sake that I wanted to throw this in on scheduling, I know some of the, I want to get this in there, 2 minutes, time. This is up there, so you can look. Just real quick, that chart again, because when I was ending up with everybody, I want you to know that basically, we're sitting here, and first I want to thank you guys as an audience, because the amount of you acknowledging about not pushing kids, because I'm sure you guys know that up here, I feel like we're preaching to the choir, like you can hear what we were saying, it felt really good for us. But 6th grade into 7th grade, the teachers are going to be making recommendations. They're not going to be binding, but the teachers are going to let you guys know this is where we think the kids should be. I'm going to ask, and again, this is all up there. There is a rubric I showed you when I said to you earlier about a 6th grader can get into algebra in 7th grade. There's an option. That's on the website. There's information about that as well. 7th grade into 8th grade, same thing. There's 3 different courses up there, and what to think about, kind of what Mr. Easiak was saying as far as who the child is. Math 8 versus algebra, I know is the big one. That's what we have a lot of concern. One thing I do want to say about that, I'm giving you my time's up. This is all up there, but in the end, and this really is the truth, and I used the data today, thank you, but it's the truth, and the actual number is 84.6. Currently, in 8th grade, teachers make recommendations on what they believe their child should take. And we know parents know things that we don't know, so we do allow parents to make the choice. You're making the choice for the right reason. That should be very few kids, but right now, over 80% of the kids who are sitting in Algebra 1 who are recommended to be in Math 8 are going to repeat Algebra next year. That's that.
Right now?
While she's out of time, I know the one thing she also reminded me that she wanted to say, and this is my Dr. Jumping reminder, is if the recommendation to repeat Algebra 1, if they accelerated and then got identified that it was a mistake, do not repeat geometry, do not try to take something over the summer. Repeating Algebra 1 and rebuilding that foundation is the absolute best course of action. And again, noting those multiple on-ramps that we talked about much earlier in the presentation, I know I am now pushing the limits with my boss, so I'm now going to turn things over.
That's all up there too. I just threw that in at the end. I knew I was going to get this. I thought I'd get questions.
It is on that. So we can just go to the questions.
No questions.
We are on a time crunch because students will be coming in about 45 minutes as part of the building usage in the class. So this is your plan. So I am now turning things over to the Assistant Superintendent, Ms. Kristen Fox, for the Quest presentation. We might, if you are not staying for that gifted and talented presentation, maybe take a quick 30 seconds.
Yep. Yeah, if you're not interested in the presentation for the P5 Quest Gifted and Talented Program overview, you're welcome to leave at this time. I know some parents are arriving, so I'm going to give them a few seconds to come in and sit down. But we have a team, we're going to go over this with you. Welcome to the second presentation of this morning's PTO presentation. As Karen said, I am Kristen Fox, Assistant Superintendent of Curriculum Instruction. And I do have a team with me, so I want to take a second to introduce them. They are the gifted and talented Quest teachers in each of the elementary schools. We're going to take firstly from Oak. Go ahead.
Hi, I'm Jessica Kovacs. I work at Cedar Hill School. Hi, Larry.
Okay. Mrs. Bowman was also on our notice. Our goal today is to talk to you about changes that are being implemented next year to the Enrichment and Gifted and Talented program. This presentation will be posted on the district website after we finish today. It's on the parent page under presentations. Linked here, where the blue link, you can get to the full program overview for what the Quest program will look like and how it will work. So to go more in depth, I suggest that you go there. And some additional resources can be found on my page as well. What? So did you go down to the... The other way to do it, on the screen like that, so people can read. No, but I can get rid of that. Yeah, I can do this. No, but I can. Thank you. All right, I think we figured it out. Right. All right, sorry about the technical difficulties. Our goal today is to just make sure you understand the changes to the program, how it's going to work, the identification process, and then we will have some time for a few questions. So when we set out this fall, a committee was formed in the fall to take a look at our program And this was our primary objective, to look at our program and find ways to expand the programming to meet the needs of a greater number of students covering more disciplines, so going beyond mathematics, while maintaining, what we believe is really good about what we've been doing with mathematics for the last few years. So that was our primary goal, and I think that we've accomplished that. So in the fall, a committee was formed of teachers, multiple teachers from each building, the gifted and talented teachers, as well as lower elementary teachers, administrators from each building, a parent from each building, board members, and a few other district administrators like Mrs. Bowman. We also brought in a consultant from Rutgers University, Dr. Lenore Cortina, who served on our committee and then worked with us afterwards to finalize the recommendations that we are making. So the next two slides are going to really capture the changes that are being implemented for next year. The main goal is what we are implementing is school-wide enrichment model, which actually is a model that was in the district from 2001 or 2 to 2009. So we're really bringing back a model that we used to have that we thought was wonderful at the time. Once we taught it, it was eliminated due to budget cuts. And so we're really modifying the program to bring back school-wide. School-wide enrichment allows really all of the children to participate in different levels of programming. There are 3 types of programming. Type 1 can apply to all of the students in the building, a grade level, a class, but it's whole groups, larger groups of students, and it's activities that are brought in, presenters that are brought in, that are exposure-based to new topics that are not generally seen in the regular curriculum. So it is interest-based programming. Type 2 could be an extension of that. So for example, the example you use a lot is you might have a presentation on origami in a type 1 activity that maybe the entire grade is brought in for. Type 2, for students who really like that and were interested in it, they might be pulled during a lunch bunch or some other time that they had in their day to learn how to do origami. So that's more of a skill building of a smaller group of kids who are actually interested in it. And then level 3 or type 3 is more individualized for students who are more identified as an accelerated learner or an advanced learner or a gifted learner, where they would go deeper. They might do a research project on the history of origami as just one example of how those 3 levels might operate. So that's really the school-wide enrichment model, and we believe it gives us an opportunity to provide kids with a lot of ways to explore things they're interested in, they're good at, and will broaden their horizon. So in order to do this, these are the other changes that we're making. So we are phasing out grade 3 accelerated or telescoping math. We believe that the students who would still be able to join accelerated math in 4th and 5th grade and complete the curriculum to prepare them to enter 6th grade accelerated math. 3rd grade students are going to still have the opportunity, if they're identified, to participate in advanced math programming, but not in a pull-out model every day, but things that would be more targeted to areas of their interest and their strengths. We are revising the identification process, and we'll go over that in more detail on a few later slides. And we're going to introduce the Rensselaer Profiler, which we'll show you in a few minutes. And that is something that will be available to students K through 5. So this will require some programming development over the summer, and maybe even the next few summers, where we increase those opportunities for students as we expand our programming and refine our scheduling. And as we do this, we will always keep a mind on how that's impacting future programming. So what are the changes in the elementary program going to have on the programming at William N. and potentially even further? So there is a program evaluation scheduled to begin this summer in mathematics, in addition to world languages, where they will consider these impacts as well as they kind of move forward in their recommendations for mathematics. So just a little overview of where we're coming from with our approach to gifted programming. So the first thing you see is really the state definition of gifted, what a gifted learner is or what gifted education needs to be. A gifted and talented student is somebody who has high levels of ability in one or more content areas compared to their chronological peers in the local district, and therefore they require modification of their programming. Their needs are not met in the regular classroom. So it is not unlike specialized programming that we provide for students who are struggling learners and who require modifications of their program. These are students at the other end of the spectrum. And so those are some important distinctions that you're going to see reflected in the identification profiles that we will be using. On the right, I just wanted to make a note of this. If you wanted to do a little bit more of a look at what we've relied on for this research, Joseph Renzulli is a name that we will use. We're adopting his profiler, and the school-wide enrichment model is really based on his philosophy. You can see his name that he gives to the program. And this graphic really represents what he talks about in the article linked at the bottom, what makes giftedness. So he talks about 3 character traits that collide, really, for someone to be a truly gifted learner. We have above average ability on the left, task commitment is the purple circle, and creativity is the bottom circle. So any one of those by themselves is not really necessarily a gifted learner.